New Year's Eve. The office building stood empty, every floor dark except the top. Victoria Hale sat across from the only person who stayed behind with her. Lucas Reed, her secretary of 2 years. She had given him signals, hundreds of them, thousands of moments when she could have said it out loud. But he never noticed. The clock ticked closer to midnight. The silence became unbearable. She slammed her hand on the desk and the words exploded out of her. The ones she had been holding back for 2 years. I love you. Idiot. How could a man be so completely blind 2 years earlier? Lucas Reed walked into the glass tower on Fifth Avenue with a resume that didn't belong there. He wore a suit he bought at a discount store the week before. His tie was crooked. He knew it was crooked, but he couldn't fix it in the elevator because his hands were shaking. The woman at the front desk looked at him like he had wandered into the wrong building. She told him to wait on the 43rd floor. He waited for an hour and 17 minutes. Victoria Hale's office took up half the floor. The walls were glass. The city spread out behind her like something she owned. She sat behind a desk made of black marble and didn't look up when he entered. Lucas stood in the doorway until she finally raised her eyes. She studied him the way someone studies a piece of machinery they're not sure will work. She asked him one question. Why do you need this job? Lucas didn't give her the answer he rehearsed. He told her the truth. His wife died 3 years ago. He had a son who was 7 years old. He needed stability, and he needed it to last. Victoria tilted her head slightly. She asked him if he could start on Monday. Lucas learned quickly that Victoria Hale didn't hire people for their credentials. She hired them because she saw something others didn't. He never understood what she saw in him. Maybe it was the desperation. Maybe it was the honesty. Maybe it was something else entirely. He showed up on Monday at 6:00 in the morning, and she was already there. She handed him a schedule that filled 3 pages and told him to keep up. He kept up barely. But he kept up. The job consumed him in ways he didn't expect. Victoria moved through the world at a speed that left no room for hesitation. Meetings started at 7. Calls came in from Tokyo at midnight. She ate lunch standing up or didn't eat at all. Lucas became the person who made sure she ate. He became the person who rescheduled the impossible. He became the person who anticipated what she needed before she asked for it. It wasn't about being smart. It was about paying attention. Lucas was good at paying attention. His son's name was Ethan. He was 7 now. Lucas picked him up from school every day at 3:15 unless Victoria needed him. On those days. Ethan went to his grandmother's house. Lucas hated those days. He hated the look on Ethan's face when he texted to say he'd be late. But the job paid for the apartment. It paid for the school. It paid for the stability Lucas promised his son after his mother died. So he stayed. And Victoria never asked him to stay late without reason. That was the thing about Victoria. She didn't waste anyone's time. If she kept Lucas in the office past 7, it was because something critical was happening. A deal was falling apart. An investor was backing out. A system was crashing. She didn't apologize for it. But she noticed. She noticed everything one night. Lucas was on the phone with Ethan's school trying to explain why he couldn't make the parent-teacher conference. Victoria walked past his desk and heard the conversation. The next morning, she moved 3 meetings and told Lucas to leave it, 2. He stared at her. She told him not to make her repeat herself. The office was a fortress of steel and glass, but Victoria lived inside it like a prisoner. Lucas saw that within the first month. She arrived before everyone and left after everyone. She took calls during dinner. She worked through weekends. She smiled in board meetings and press conferences. But the smile never reached her eyes. People feared her. People respected her. People wanted her attention. But no one stayed close. Lucas wondered if that was by design or by accident. He suspected it was both. Victoria never talked about her personal life. She never mentioned family. She never mentioned friends. The only people she spoke to outside of work were her lawyers and her accountants. Lucas knew this because he managed her calendar. He saw the empty spaces where other people had birthdays and weddings and holidays. Victoria had conference calls and shareholder updates. Once Lucas asked her if she wanted him to block off time for Christmas. She looked at him like he'd asked her to set the building on fire. She told him Christmas was just another Thursday. The first time Lucas noticed something shift was 6 months into the job. Victoria asked him to stay late to finish a presentation. They worked until 11, when they finally finished. She leaned back in her chair and asked him about his son, not in the polite way people ask when they're making small talk. She asked specific questions. What grade was he in? What did he like to read? Was he adjusting after losing his mother? Lucas answered carefully. He wasn't used to talking about Ethan at work, but Victoria listened, really listened. When he finished, she nodded once and told him to go home the next week. A package arrived at Lucas's apartment. It was a set of books, science fiction, the kind Ethan loved. There was no note. Lucas knew who sent it. After that, things changed in small ways. Victoria started asking about Ethan more often. She adjusted meetings so Lucas could leave earlier on Thursdays when Ethan had soccer practice. She stopped scheduling weekend work unless it was absolutely necessary. Lucas told himself it was professional courtesy. She valued him as an employee and wanted to keep him happy. That made sense. That was logical. The alternative didn't make sense. The alternative was impossible. But the small changes kept coming. Victoria started having lunch delivered for both of them instead of just herself. She asked Lucas to join her in meetings where his presence wasn't technically required. She trusted him with decisions that went beyond his job description. Other employees noticed. They started treating Lucas differently. Some resented it. Some tried to use him as a backdoor to Victoria. Lucas ignored all of it. He focused on his work. He focused on his son. He didn't let himself think about what any of it meant. One afternoon in late spring, Victoria called Lucas into her office and told him to close the door. He thought he was being fired. She told him she was promoting him. The title didn't matter much. The pay increase did. Lucas tried to thank her, but she waved him off. She said he earned it. Then she asked him if Ethan would like to visit the office sometime. Lucas didn't know what to say. He said yes. The following Saturday, Ethan came to the office. Victoria gave him a tour. She showed him the servers. She let him sit in her chair. She talked to him like he was an adult. Ethan didn't stop talking about it for a week. Lucas told himself it was kindness. Victoria was a good person under the cold exterior. She cared about her employees. She cared about their families. That was all it was. But late at night, when he replayed the way she looked at Ethan, he wondered. And then he stopped wondering because wondering was dangerous. Wondering led to places he couldn't afford to go. He was a single father with a 9-year-old son. She was a billionaire who could buy and sell companies before breakfast. The gap between them wasn't just wide. It was a canyon, and Lucas had no intention of falling into it. So, he kept his head down. He did his job. He went home to his son. He ignored the way Victoria's eyes followed him when she thought he wasn't looking. He ignored the way her voice softened when she said his name. He ignored the fact that she never smiled at anyone else, the way she smiled at him. He built a wall between what he saw and what he allowed himself to believe. It was safer that way for both of them. 2 years passed like that. 2 years of carefully maintained boundaries. 2 years of professional distance. 2 years of Victoria giving him every signal she could without saying the words out loud. And 2 years of Lucas refusing to see any of it, because if he saw it, he'd have to do something about it. And he didn't know what that something would be, so he stayed blind. Willfully, desperately, completely. The signal started getting harder to ignore. Around the 18-month mark, Victoria stopped eating lunch alone. She'd order food for 2 and tell Lucas to sit down. Not ask. Tell. He'd pull up a chair across from her desk, and they'd eat in silence or talk about work or sometimes about nothing at all. She asked him once what his favorite movie was. He told her he didn't have time for movies anymore. She looked at him like that was the saddest thing she'd ever heard. The next day, she had a projector installed in the small conference room. She told him it was for client presentations. He never saw her use it for clients. Other people in the office started noticing. Jessica from accounting made a comment about how Lucas must be doing something right to get so much FaceTime with the boss. Marcus from legal asked him if he was sleeping with her. Lucas told Marcus to shut his mouth. Marcus laughed and said he was joking, but the question sat in Lucas's chest like a stone. He started paying attention to how much time he spent in Victoria's office. He started making excuses to leave earlier. Victoria noticed. She always noticed. She didn't say anything, but her jaw tightened every time he invented a reason to go. The problem was that Lucas liked being around her. That was the truth he didn't want to admit. She was sharp and funny in ways the public never saw. She'd make observations about people that were so accurate they bordered on cruel. She remembered details about his life that he'd mentioned once in passing. She asked about Ethan's soccer games and his spelling tests, and whether he still had nightmares about his mother. Lucas had never talked to anyone about Ethan's nightmares, not even his own mother. But somehow it felt easy to talk to Victoria, and that terrified him. One Friday in October, Victoria told Lucas she needed him to stay late. A system failure had crashed their entire cloud infrastructure. Engineers were working around the clock to fix it. Victoria needed to be there, which meant Lucas needed to be there. He texted his mother to pick up Ethan. He settled in for a long night. Around 9, Victoria emerged from a meeting with the tech team, looking exhausted. She dropped into the chair next to his desk instead of going back to her office. She asked him if he ever regretted taking this job. Lucas looked at her. The question felt heavier than it should. He told her no, he didn't regret it. Regret. She nodded slowly. Then she said something that made his stomach drop. She said she was glad he stayed. Not glad he took the job. Glad he stayed. The distinction felt enormous. Lucas went home that night and couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince himself he was reading too much into everything. Victoria was his boss. She valued him as an employee. That was all. But his mind kept circling back to the way she looked at him sometimes, like she was waiting for him to say something, like she was holding her breath. He told himself he was imagining it. He had to be imagining it because the alternative was impossible. A woman like Victoria Hale didn't fall for her secretary. That didn't happen in real life. That happened in movies and romance novels, not in glass towers in Manhattan. Thanksgiving came and went. Lucas spent it with his mother and Ethan. Victoria spent it working. Lucas knew because she sent him emails throughout the day. None of them were urgent. They were just updates, just messages that said she was thinking about work or maybe thinking about him. He didn't let himself finish that thought. He responded professionally. He kept his distance. And when he came back to the office on Monday, Victoria looked at him like he'd been gone for a year. December arrived with freezing rain and holiday decorations that Victoria refused to allow in the office. She said they were distracting. Lucas suspected she just hated the reminder that most people had somewhere else to be during the holidays. The company holiday party was scheduled for the 15th. Victoria attended for exactly 30 minutes. She made a speech. She thanked everyone for their hard work. Then she disappeared back to her office. Lucas found her there an hour later. She was standing at the window looking out at the city. She didn't turn around when he entered. She asked him if he was having fun at the party. He said it was fine. She said he should go back. He didn't move. She finally turned to face him. The look in her eyes was something Lucas had never seen before. It was vulnerable, raw. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something. Then she closed it and told him to go enjoy himself. He left, but he didn't go back to the party. The company was in the middle of a major acquisition that was falling apart. The target company's CEO was getting cold feet. Investors were threatening to pull out. Victoria was working 20-hour days trying to hold everything together. Lucas worked beside her. He canceled plans with Ethan. He stayed in the office until 2:00 in the morning. He brought Victoria coffee when she forgot to eat. He proofread contracts until his eyes burned, and through all of it, Victoria never asked him to stay. She just looked at him like she expected him to, like she knew he would. And he did. One night in mid-December, they were alone in the office reviewing financial projections. It was past midnight. The cleaning crew had come and gone. Victoria leaned back in her chair and rubbed her eyes. She looked exhausted. Lucas asked her when the last time she slept was. She said she didn't remember. He told her she needed to go home. She laughed. It was a bitter sound. She said she didn't have a home. She had an apartment she slept in sometimes. That wasn't the same thing. Lucas didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything. Victoria looked at him across the desk. She asked him if he was happy. The question caught him off guard. He said he didn't think about happiness much. He thought about stability, about giving Ethan a good life. She nodded like she understood. Then she said something that made his chest tighten. She said he deserved to be happy. Too. Not just stable. Happy. Lucas went home that night feeling like something had shifted. He couldn't name it. He couldn't define it. But it was there sitting between them like a third presence. He tried to ignore it. He tried to focus on work and Ethan and everything else that made sense, but it kept creeping back in. The way Victoria's voice softened when she said his name. The way she found reasons to keep him close. The way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention. He wasn't imagining it. He knew he wasn't imagining it, but he didn't know what to do about it. The week before Christmas, a woman approached Lucas in the lobby. Her name was Sarah. She worked in marketing. She asked him if he wanted to get coffee sometime. She was pretty. She seemed nice. Lucas said, "Sure." They went to coffee the next Saturday. Sarah talked about her job and her apartment and her dog. She laughed at his jokes. She touched his arm when she was making a point. It was easy, comfortable, normal. Lucas should have been interested, but all he could think about was Victoria, about the way she looked at him the night she asked if he was happy, about the weight of that question. He told Sarah he had a great time. He didn't call her again. On Monday, Victoria was different, colder. She didn't ask him to have lunch with her. She kept their interactions brief and professional. Lucas didn't understand what changed. Then Jessica from accounting made a comment about seeing him with a woman at the coffee shop near the office. Lucas felt his stomach drop. He realized Victoria must have heard. She must have heard and thought he was dating someone. The idea that she cared about that was too much, too big, too impossible. But she was pulling away. The warmth that had been building between them was gone, replaced by the icy professionalism she showed everyone else. Lucas tried to tell himself it was better this way, safer, but it felt like losing something before he ever had it. He watched Victoria retreat behind her walls, watched her stop asking about Ethan, stop inviting him to lunch, stop looking at him like she was waiting for something. It hurt more than it should have, more than he wanted to admit, and he didn't know how to fix it because he didn't know what was broken. Or maybe he knew exactly what was broken. He just didn't want to name it. Christmas came. Lucas spent it with Ethan and his mother. Victoria worked. She sent him one email. It said, "Merry Christmas, nothing else." Lucas stared at those 2 words for 10 minutes, trying to figure out what they meant, trying to figure out what he was supposed to say back. He wrote and deleted 5 different responses. Finally, he just wrote, "Merry Christmas to you too." It felt inadequate. Everything felt inadequate. The acquisition deal closed 3 days before New Year's Eve. It should have been a triumph. The company's stock jumped 12%. Victoria was on the cover of 3 business magazines, but she looked hollow. Lucas saw it in her eyes during the press conference. She smiled and thanked her team and talked about the future, but there was nothing behind it. She was going through the motions, playing the part she'd been playing for so long. She'd forgotten it was a part. New Year's Eve fell on a Tuesday. Most companies were closed, but Victoria's company wasn't most companies. There was a crisis with the integration of the acquired company. Systems weren't talking to each other. Data was being lost. Clients were threatening to leave. Victoria called an emergency meeting with the tech team. She told everyone else to go home. Enjoy the holiday. She'd handle it. Lucas didn't go home. He showed up at the office at 6 Hosuras in the evening. Victoria was already there. She looked surprised to see him. She asked him why he came. He said because she needed him. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded and told him to come in. The building was empty. Everyone had gone home to their families, or their parties, or wherever people went on New Year's Eve. The cleaning crew wasn't scheduled until the next day. It was just Lucas and Victoria, and the hum of the servers, and the distant sound of the city celebrating below. They worked through the evening. Victoria was on calls with engineers in California and Tokyo. Lucas coordinated with the communications team to draft statements for clients. The crisis was manageable, not catastrophic, but it required attention, required presence, required someone to be there holding everything together. That someone was always Victoria. And lately, it was also Lucas. Around 11:00, the calls stopped. The immediate fires were out. There would be more work in the morning. But for now, it was handled. Victoria walked out of her office and found Lucas still at his desk. She asked him why he was still there. He said he wanted to make sure everything was under control. She told him it was. He could go. He should go. Ethan was probably waiting up for him. Lucas shook his head. He said Ethan was at his grandmother's house. He said he had nowhere else to be. Victoria looked at him like she was trying to solve an equation that didn't make sense. She asked him if he wanted a drink. She had a bottle of scotch in her office that someone gave her for Christmas. Lucas said yes. They sat in her office with the city stretched out behind them. Fireworks were already starting downtown. Early celebrations, impatient people. Victoria poured 2 glasses and handed one to Lucas. She didn't toast. She just drank. Lucas did the same. The scotch burned going down. It felt appropriate. They sat in silence for a while. Not the comfortable silence they used to share. This was different, heavier, charged with something neither of them was acknowledging. Victoria finally spoke. She asked Lucas if he was happy working for her. Not the same question she'd asked before. This one was more specific, more pointed. Lucas said yes. He was happy. She asked him why. He didn't have a good answer. He said the work was interesting, the pay was good. She gave him flexibility with Ethan. All true, all insufficient. Victoria nodded like she expected that answer, like she was disappointed by it, but not surprised. She asked him about the woman from the coffee shop. Lucas felt his chest tighten. He said it was nothing. 1 coffee, it didn't go anywhere. Victoria asked why not. Lucas said because it just didn't. She looked at him like she was waiting for more, like she was giving him an opening. But Lucas didn't take it. He couldn't. The gap between them was too wide, the risk was too great, so he stayed silent. And Victoria's expression closed off. The vulnerability disappeared, replaced by the mask she wore for the rest of the world. The clock ticked toward midnight. Neither of them moved. Neither of them suggested leaving. They just sat there in the quiet office with the weight of 2 years pressing down on them. 2 years of signals missed, of chances not taken, of words left unsaid. Lucas could feel something building, something inevitable. He didn't know if it was good or bad. He just knew it was coming, and he didn't know how to stop it or if he even wanted to. Victoria stood and walked to the window. The city glittered below them. Fireworks burst over the harbor in the distance. Lucas watched her back, watched the rigid line of her shoulders, watched the way she held herself like she was carrying something too heavy. She spoke without turning around. She said she was tired. Not physically tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of waiting. Tired of watching him look everywhere except at her. Lucas felt his throat close. He wanted to ask what she meant. But he already knew. He'd always known. She turned to face him. Her expression was raw in a way he'd never seen. She said she'd been patient. She'd given him every signal she could without crossing the line. She changed her schedule for him. She asked about his son. She stayed close when she could have kept her distance. She did everything except say the words out loud, and he never once acknowledged it. Lucas opened his mouth, but nothing came out. What could he say? That he noticed but pretended not to, that he was too scared to believe it, that the gap between them felt too wide to cross. All of it was true. None of it was enough. Victoria's voice got quieter, sharper. She asked him if he thought she invited every employee to bring their child to the office, if he thought she moved meetings for anyone else, if he thought she ate lunch with her other staff. Lucas felt something crack in his chest. He said he didn't know what she wanted from him. Victoria laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. She said that was the problem. He didn't know because he refused to see. He built a wall between what was happening and what he was willing to admit, and she was done waiting for him to tear it down. Lucas stood up. His hands were shaking. He said it wasn't that simple. She was his boss. She was a billionaire. He was a single father who could barely keep his life together before she hired him. The power dynamic alone made everything impossible. Victoria shook her head. She said that was an excuse, a convenient way to avoid the real issue. The real issue was that he was afraid of losing what he had, afraid of risking stability, afraid of being happy, because happiness could be taken away, just like his wife was taken away. The words hit Lucas like a physical blow. He took a step back. His voice came out rough. He told her not to bring his wife into this. Victoria didn't flinch. She said his wife was already in it. She'd been in it from the beginning. She was the ghost standing between them. The reason Lucas couldn't let himself feel anything. The reason he treated every moment of joy like it was borrowed time. She said she understood grief. She understood loss. But she didn't understand choosing loneliness when something real was right in front of him. Lucas felt anger surge through him. He asked her what she knew about loneliness. She lived in a penthouse apartment and ran a company worth billions. She could have anything she wanted. Anyone she wanted. Victoria's expression hardened. She said yes, she could have anyone except the one person she actually wanted. The one person who looked at her like she was just his boss, just another obligation in his carefully controlled life. She said she'd been alone her entire adult life, surrounded by people who wanted something from her. Money, access, prestige. Lucas was the first person who didn't want anything. The first person who stayed because he wanted to. And she'd been foolish enough to think that meant something. The clock on the wall showed 11:52, 8 minutes until midnight. 8 minutes until the new year. Lucas could hear fireworks getting louder. The city was celebrating. Everyone was celebrating. And he was standing in an empty office watching the only person who made him feel alive in years tell him she was done waiting. He didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to say. Every instinct told him to leave, to protect himself, to protect her, to maintain the boundaries that kept both of them safe. But his feet wouldn't move. Victoria walked back to her desk. She picked up her glass and finished the scotch. She set it down carefully. She said she wasn't going to keep doing this. She wasn't going to keep pretending. She'd built an entire company from nothing. She'd negotiated with people who wanted to destroy her. She'd survived every attempt to tear her down. But she couldn't survive another year of loving someone who wouldn't let himself love her back. The word hung in the air between them. Love. She'd said it, finally said it, and Lucas felt everything he'd been holding back come crashing down. He said her name, just her name, Victoria. She looked at him, waiting, always waiting. He tried to find the words, tried to explain the fear that lived in his chest, the fear that if he reached for happiness, it would be ripped away, that if he let himself love someone again, he'd lose them, like he lost his wife, like he almost lost himself. He said he wasn't brave enough. Not for this, not for her. Victoria's eyes filled with something that looked like grief. She said she wasn't asking him to be brave. She was asking him to be honest with her, with himself. Lucas thought about the last 2 years, thought about every lunch they shared, every late night in the office, every time she asked about Ethan, every time she looked at him like he mattered. He thought about the coffee date with Sarah and how hollow it felt, how wrong, because the only person he wanted to have coffee with was standing in front of him. The only person he wanted to talk to. The only person who made him feel like maybe he could be more than just a father and an employee. Maybe he could be someone who deserved to be loved. He thought about all of it, and then he stopped thinking. He crossed the room before he could change his mind. Victoria's eyes widened. He stopped in front of her desk. His heart was hammering. His voice came out unsteady. He said he noticed everything, every changed meeting, every question about his son. Every moment she gave him a reason to stay close. He noticed all of it, and he ignored it because he was terrified. Terrified of wanting something he couldn't have. Terrified of believing someone like her could see something worthwhile in someone like him. He said he'd been alone for so long that he forgot what it felt like to be wanted, to be seen. And she saw him from the very beginning. She saw him, and he spent 2 years pretending she didn't. Victoria stood frozen. Lucas kept going. He said he wasn't with Sarah because Sarah wasn't her. Nobody was her. Nobody made him want to stay at work past midnight. Nobody made him rethink his entire life. Nobody made him feel like maybe he deserved more than just survival. He said he'd been so focused on keeping everything stable that he forgot stability wasn't the same as happiness. And he hadn't been happy in a long time. Not until she asked him to stay for lunch that first time. Not until she met his son. Not until she'd looked at him like he was more than just a name on a payroll. The clock hit 11:58. 2 minutes left. Victoria's expression shifted. The armor fell away. She asked him what he was saying. Lucas took a breath. He said he was saying he'd been an idiot. A blind, stubborn idiot who couldn't see what was right in front of him. He was saying she was right about everything. The fear, the ghost of his wife, the walls he built, all of it. But he was also saying he didn't want to be afraid anymore. He didn't want to spend another year pretending. He didn't want to lose her because he was too scared to admit he loved her. The words came out raw, unpolished, but they were true. Victoria moved around the desk. She stood in front of him close enough that he could see the tears in her eyes. She said she'd waited 2 years to hear him say that. 2 years of dropping hints and changing schedules and trying to show him without saying it. She said she was about to give up, about to accept that he'd never see her the way she saw him. Lucas said he saw her. He'd always seen her. He was just too scared to do anything about it. Victoria reached up and touched his face. Her hand was trembling. She said she didn't need him to be fearless. She just needed him to try. The clock struck midnight. Fireworks exploded outside the window. The city erupted in light and sound. The new year arrived and Lucas kissed her. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't practiced. It was desperate and honest and 2 years overdue. Victoria kissed him back like she'd been holding her breath and finally remembered how to breathe. They stood there in the empty office with the city celebrating around them. 2 people who'd been dancing around each other for 24 months finally stopped moving when they pulled apart. Victoria was crying. Lucas was too. She said she didn't know what happened next. She didn't know how they made this work. Lucas said he didn't either. But he wanted to try. He wanted to figure it out together. Victoria nodded. She said she could work with that. They stood there holding each other while fireworks painted the sky. The year turned over. Everything changed. And for the first time in a long time, Lucas wasn't afraid of what came next. He thought about Ethan, about how to explain this to a 9-year-old boy who still missed his mother, about whether Victoria was ready for that responsibility, about all the complications that came with mixing his personal life and his professional life. But those were problems for tomorrow. tonight. He just wanted to stand here with her, with someone who saw him, really saw him, and decided he was worth waiting for, worth fighting for, worth loving. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.